60% of Americans say that the federal government has too much power, and that is by 1 point the highest in Gallup's history of asking this question, which goes back for about a decade. That percent was at 59% a few years ago, but back right after 9/11, that is in the years following 9/11, it was below 50%, as low as 39% at one point. So clearly, when you look at the graph, you see a definite uptick in the percent of Americans who say the federal government has too much power, and again, now we are at a new record high for that perception among the American public. What's interesting is to look at this by party. This is no great shock that at the moment, Republicans are much more likely than independents and in particular Democrats to say that the federal government has too much power. Look at the spread there. It is fairly enormous, 81% of Republicans compared to just 38% of Democrats who say the government has too much power. Now you may be tempted to say, well, that's a fundamental philosophic difference between the parties. It's always been the case, but that's not the case. When we go back to the Bush administration years, we actually find that it was the Democrats who said that the government had too much power, and the Republicans were less likely to say the government had too much power. And of course, this represented a perception of who was in power, the Bush administration. A lot of actions that were taken after 9/11 by the Bush administration didn't sit well with Democrats, and they said the administration and its agencies are exercising too much power. So it's not fundamental, it's not unchangeable. These things can flip around, as we've just seen now, but the difference now between Republicans and Democrats, at least over the last several years of the Obama administration, is a bigger spread than we saw back when we had the flip with the Bush administration. But we can say at the moment, when we put it all together, 6 in 10 Americans say the federal government has too much power, and again, that's as high as we've measured it going back for a decade. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.